Red Line Logbook here to talk about the Freya Familia. And the Freya Familia starts off with Freya up in heaven. Now, Freya is very special up in heaven because she basically had the run of the place in her part of heaven. The reason for this is because her charm ability was so powerful that no other god could resist it, excluding Odin. Now, goddesses of love exist in every pantheon, and every pantheon also has a virgin goddess whose job it is to hold down the power of a goddess of love. But because Freya was so powerful that the virgin goddess of her region, the virgin goddess that was to counter Freya, could not handle it and was unable to undo her charm on other people. All the virgin goddess could do was basically just resist the charm herself. She couldn't free anyone else. As a result of this, Odin only had one choice, and that was to lock Freya up in her temple and make sure she couldn't leave. It was the only way to protect anyone from her charm. And so basically, her temple became her prison/love nest, where Freya would then collect the souls of heroes from down below that she liked and decided to join her harem. It didn't matter if they were men or women, as long as they tickled her fancy, she just collected as many souls as possible. The problem was, none of these people were her true love, and over time, even though she loved them at a certain point, she'd get bored with them, throw them to the side, and maybe remember them every once in a while and pick them back up and play with them again, basically treating people like toys. This emptiness slowly crushed Freya until eventually she ran from her temple and just happened to wander into a field of flowers, and while basking in the beauty of these flowers, she then was able to cry. That is when the virgin goddess of her region found her, and told her the way she lives is horrid, and she should learn to find her Ottar. Ottar basically meaning her true love. Yeah, the reason why she told her this is because virgin goddesses don't hate sex, they just think you should get married before you have sex, and that one person should be your life partner. And so this virgin goddess was telling Freya just to find her true love, to find her life partner. Freya, not entirely understanding this concept, believed that an Ottar was more like the perfect being that would stop the aching in her heart and bring her to peace. Technically, a true love does that, but a true love is also more than that. So at this moment, Freya was just grasping at straws for anything to bring her joy in her life. Now eventually, as the gods were ascending down to the mortal realm, she decided to do the same. She figured it'd be nice to have a change of pace, because in the mortal world, gods aren't allowed to use their powers. No arcanum at all. But she still had her charm, and she still had her natural beauty, and as a result of that, people just fawned at her, and she had just an easy life in the mortal world as she did in the heavens. She found warriors she liked, that she joined her familia, became her lovers. Basically, nothing really changed for her, and this once again started to break her little by little. And as she wandered the world, she eventually came upon a new field of flowers in the mortal realm, and she did the exact same thing she did last time, started crying into it. That's where she met Mia. Now, Mia, when she saw her crying, Freya got really scared about this and then tried to charm Mia. Mia realized what was happening to her and was able to move fast enough to punch Freya to prevent the charm from activating. And this created a dynamic between Freya and Mia, where Freya just experienced the first time ever someone not being able affected by her charm. And so she then tried to turn Mia into her Ottar. And Mia was like, nope, that ain't happening. One, Mia's not gay. But two, more importantly, the way Mia saw Freya for the first time was her crying into a field. And so at that point, what Mamma Mia felt was pity for this girl. She's basically the first child that Mamma Mia adopts. I know that sounds kind of weird because Freya is a goddess, which means she is eons old, and Mamma Mia is a dwarf. But still, that's the relationship they ended up developing, where Mamma Mia basically became a parent for Freya. Mamma Mia then joined Freya's familia, and she was quickly disgusted by the way it operated. You see, Freya didn't actually run her familia like you should as a god. Instead, she just let her kids do as they wanted. And the way these kids thought they could prove that they were the best for Freya was by fighting. And so that's actually where the baptism starts. It's not because Freya thought it was a good idea, but it's because her kids wanted to prove that they were better than every other one of her lovers. And to point out what the baptism is, it is basically a fight to the death from sunrise to sunset every single day. You basically go out into a field where everyone in a giant fight is fighting each other. No teaming up, no nothing. It's just a full-on brawl where everyone tries to kill each other. And they use swords, magic, shields, everything you could possibly imagine. And you are bludgeoned to near death over and over and over. You can even have your limbs chopped clean off. This is how this goes. And then immediately before you actually die, a healer then heals you, so you then go back into the fighting. And this process repeats throughout the entire day. Mamma Mia, of course, took part part in these baptisms. She didn't have a choice. She joined the Familia. But she realized at a certain point, there were people dying unnecessarily because they didn't have the strength to get up the next day and continue in the baptism. And so Mamma Mia then decided that she would produce a massive feast at the end of the day for everyone to eat. Yes, that's right. Mamma Mia cooked the meals for the entire Familia, her entire tenure. And that's impressive because Mamma Mia wasn't just some grunt. She started out as one, sure, but she eventually made her way up to a level 6 and still was making everyone's meals. She became the captain of the Familia and was still making everyone's meals. The healers of the Familia got so impressed by this that they decided to start helping out with the meal prep. And so a term was created known as the Cinderellas with full bellies. Yes, that is the healing unit of the Freya Familia. They heal you and they feed you. Now, in Freya's travels, she eventually ended up in Orario, and nothing really changed there. She enjoyed herself, collected a few more kids to join her Familia, and then was planning on leaving and continuing her travels around the world. But Zeus didn't want that. Zeus saw the potential in the Freya Familia and their dedication to their goddess, and he realized that they would become insanely powerful one day. And so, it was unclear if he wanted her as a backup plan in case him and the Hera Familias failed to kill the one-eyed black dragon, or originally he was hoping that Freya Familia would get strong enough to join them in their battle against the one-eyed black dragon. Either way, he asked Hera to convince Freya to stay, and Hera, being Hera, her solution was just to challenge Freya to a war game, and if Freya lost, she would be stuck in Orario forever. That's not a joke. She basically did the exact same thing that Odin did to her back in the heavens. She turned Orario into Freya's prison. And I am not underselling this. Hera's Familia crushed Freya's. It wasn't even a fight, it was a massacre. This is the only time Freya ever said she was humiliated. This didn't mean that Freya couldn't go off on a little adventure here and there, but she always had to have her main base in Orario, and she always had to return. And so, for at least decades, the Freya Familia was stuck inside of Orario. Eventually, the Zeus and Hera Familia were wiped out by the one-eyed black dragon. As a result of this gave an opportunity for both Freya and Loki to then seize power and forcibly exile Zeus and Hera from Orario. Before the banishment of Zeus and Hera, though, Ottar joined the Familia. Freya, while having a vacation outside of Orario, discovered Ottar, an orphan child of 3 years old, without a name, just out in the snow, slowly freezing to death. Freya picked him up, took him home, and gave him a name, Ottar. And from there, the boy slowly was raised by Freya until he was old enough to take care of himself, and then he started to then try to prove himself within the Familia. He ended up getting his blessing at age 7, but he didn't actually do anything for the first year of his blessing. He was still, at the moment, studying, learn how to read and write. And once he was able to do that, that's when, at age 8, he then became a level 2 within a year, which means he accomplished the same feat as Eyes in leveling up in a year. The only reason why he wasn't considered the rookie holder, just like Eyes, is because he technically got his blessing 2 years ago. So that was the official stat of when he leveled up, was 2 years. But technically, it only took him a year. He joined in on the baptisms and got the shit beat out of him constantly. He would consistently pick fights with members of the Zeus and Hera Familia, trying to outdo them and consistently get the shit beat out of him. And he consumed 3 to 4 times the portions of Mamma Mia's food after every fight. So this way he would grow big. Eventually, he worked his way up to being a level 5, and he became the vice captain when Mamma Mia decided to retire from the Familia. The former vice captain became the captain, and Ottar became the new vice captain. That's how that works. Now, opening up a restaurant was Mamma Mia's lifelong dream, and we'll go into an entire video on that when we talk about the Mistress of Fertility. For now, all you need to know is that Ottar then, while fighting members of the Zeus and Hera Familia, was slowly able to level up all the way to level 6. Now, we don't know what happened to the captain that was after Mamma Mia, but he most likely died. And so then Ottar then became the captain of the Familia. He had become a level 6 at this point, which means he was now equal in strength with Mamma Mia, and with both the Hera and Zeus Familia no longer in Orario, this made him the strongest in the city. Now, what made the small boy become a giant and work for the sole purpose of becoming the strongest in the city? Well, that was for the love of Freya. Yeah, Ottar, like every other member of his Familia, is completely obsessed with Freya. He will devote himself without question to her to the point where he is willing to annihilate anything that gets in his way. The reason why Ottar kept challenging the Freya and Zeus familiars over and over again and getting annihilated by them was simply because Freya hated them, and so Ottar hated them. It's really that simple. Ottar's entire life and purpose is dedicated to his goddess. He is her ultimate weapon and guard dog. During the 7 Days of Blood, he ended up getting into multiple fights with a former member of the Zeus Familia, Zard. And he had a one-on-one duel with Zard at the final battle, where he successfully was able to defeat him. This defeat of Zard is what allowed Ottar to become a level 7, and the undisputed strongest in all of Orario, even surpassing Mamma Mia. But more importantly to Ottar, he defeated Zard. He defeated a symbol of the Zeus and Hera Familia that was still gnawing at the back of the heads of both Freya and Ottar alike. And so by defeating Zard, he was then finally able to fulfill both of their greatest wishes, which was to defeat the Zeus and Hera Familia. And from this point on, Ottar continued just to dive deeper into the dungeon, killing whatever he can to become as strong as possible for the sake of his goddess. Ottar's current stats are level 7, Strength is S999, Endurance S999 again, Dexterity S991, Agility S981, Magic D566, Hunter E, Abnormal Resistance E, Spirit Healing Unknown, Magic Resistance F, Crush G, Healing Power Unknown, and finally Strong Body G. Now obviously two of those development abilities sounded kind of weird because one, they're meant for mages, not for a fighter like Ottar, but at the same time, I didn't give them a stat, I said unknown. The reason for this is because both of these development abilities are because of a skill. They're not natural. The skill is called Vana Angortor, and the purpose of it is basically to activate these two skills to replenish both his mind and body after using magic. What is his magic? Well, it's just a strength enhancing spell. That's literally all it does. When he casts it, it literally just buffs his strength. It doesn't add any special properties to his weapon, it doesn't give him an element, nothing. It's just increased physical strength. Don't get me wrong, this isn't a minor thing. At level 6, he was then able to use this magic to 1, match a fully charged Argonaut at level 5 against Bell, and 2, kill Zard. Yes, this is the magic that allowed a level 6 Ottar to kill a level 7 Zard. He has one other skill known as Stortus Ottar. This skill, in exchange for exhausting him, is able to allow him to go into beastification. Now, all animal people have the ability to go into beastification, but each one has different requirements. For example, werewolves have to be under a full moon. Ottar is a boar. Boar also have their own rule to going into beastification, but Ottar is able to ignore that altogether and just choose to go into beastification thanks to this skill. Beastification increases all stats of a beast person by a massive amount, and for Ottar, because he's so close to a level 8, he's on the cusp of it, this actually turns him into a level 8. And when I say he becomes a level 8, I mean he doesn't just become stronger than a level 7, but not there at level 8. I mean, he is now a level 8. He was able to defeat 3 level 7s all on his own. Haruhime gave a level boost to 3 level 6s, making them all 3 level 7s, this being Mamma Mia, Handin, and Ryu. And even in this 3-on-1 fight, because he was now a level 8, he crushed them. A couple more fun facts about Ottar and his insane levels of strength. Ottar does not move when he fights. It doesn't matter if he's surrounded, it doesn't matter if he's outnumbered, it doesn't matter if they're using magic. Ottar will stand completely in place, normally in the center of a room. In fact, he even did this against a floor boss. 2. Ottar only uses one hand when swinging his greatsword. That's all he needs. He was only ever forced to use 2 hands twice. Once against Eyes, when she went all out because she was worried about Belle about being killed by a Minotaur and Ottar was getting in her way. And the second was when he decided to compare his magical strength against Belle's Argonaut during the war game. And third, you'll always see Ottar carrying around an entire backpack full of swords. The reason for this is because he's so absurdly strong, anytime he uses one, it shatters. Ottar hates this so much that when he found out that when you fight Odeus by yourself, he summons a sword, Ottar immediately went out to kill Odeus to take his sword and turn it into his current weapon, the Grand Black Blade. This is the only weapon that Ottar can use his full strength, and it will not shatter. To explain to you just how powerful this sword is, this is the sword that Belle used with his Argonaut to kill the Black Goliath. That is the only weapon that Ottar can use that will not shatter on him. Allen and Anya, the two of them, were born in a kingdom for a couple of parents that loved them. Very simple life. That is until the one-eyed black dragon decided to annihilate their entire country in one night. And then after the country was annihilated by the one-eyed black dragon, that's when a bunch of wild monsters on the surface then decided to take advantage of the mayhem and death and decided to just start devouring everyone that still survived. This is when their parents were killed, but the two of them were able to escape thanks to Allen carrying his sister and running and never looking back. Now, the person that Allen loves the most in this world is Anya. He loves his little sister, and she loves him. The problem is his little sister's a crybaby. While on their journey as orphans, trying to survive day by day, she would consistently get angry and sad and cry and get hungry and just consistently annoy Allen because she just wasn't going along trying to help him survive. She was just a burden. Now remember, these two are both small children at this time, so her acting like a brat makes sense, and him not having the patience for a child also makes sense because he is also a child. Eventually, they were discovered by Freya, who decided to take them in and join her familia. The two of them, of course, went through the baptism. Allen was without a doubt completely dedicated to Freya, while Anya only did it because her brother became obsessed with the goddess. Over time, Allen was able to work his way up to become a level 6 and the vice captain of the Familia. As for Anya, Allen, wanting to separate himself from what he thought was his weakness, threw Anya away. You see, Allen is extremely possessive about the things he loves, and the two things he loves the most are his sister and the goddess. When it comes to the goddess, his greatest desire is to chain her to her room and so she can never go anywhere ever again, and just be with him forever. Yeah, he's kind of insane. The only reason he didn't actually go along with that is, one, because the others would kill him, but two, he personally would hate that because then that would mean the goddess wouldn't be the goddess, and that is not something he's okay with. And the second is his sister, obviously, but it was clear to Allen that she did not belong in the Familia. She just wasn't dedicated to the goddess the way he was, and she wasn't surviving so well in the baptisms. And so then Allen asked Freya to kick Anya out of the Familia, and by doing this, he would then dedicate himself to being her chariot. He did this because he believed that being connected to the goddess was the only way he would be strong enough to kill the one-eyed black dragon one day and get revenge for their parents, and also create a world of peace for his sister to live in. Anya didn't know anything about this deal, and so she spent years living outside of the Familia, away from her brother, thinking that he hated her and that she was some stupid cat who didn't deserve love. It really fucked up. Funny thing is, she's extremely forgiving, because when she found out the reason why she was kicked out, and that her brother did it to protect her, he then decided the best course of action was to... And so currently in the story, anytime she has off from her job, she's chasing her brother around the city, trying to hug him. Yeah, that's their relationship. We don't know either of their skills or abilities, but we do know both of them have magic. Allen's magic increases his acceleration to the point where he's so fast that just the wind him running by is enough to cause impact damage. As for Anya, she's able to create a massive debuff that affects anyone who hears her scream. The debuff affects all stats, and it brings you down almost an entire level. The fact that it's so powerful and it can affect so many opponents at once makes it probably the strongest debuff in the entire series. Normally, without magic, these two are still overpowered, though. Allen is so fast that he can create windstorms just by running, and he can stab you so fast you don't even realize it. You usually fall to the ground before the pain even kicks in. And Anya is level 4, so she's on the cusp of becoming a first-tier adventurer. Heighar and Hogni. These two are elves from a specific island somewhere off in the world. They used to be kings of these islands, and this island used to be split in half between the white elves and the black elves, and they were in perpetual war with each other. Both of these men hated the fact that they were kings. They wanted nothing to do with the role. One day, Freya discovered them both and fell in love with both of them. She couldn't decide on which one she wanted, and so she poked and prodded at both of their kingdoms, forcing an all-out war instead of small skirmishes. This war lasted 3 days, and every single person on the island was massacred. The only two that left alive were their kings, Heighar and Hogni, who were in perpetual combat, equal, unable to kill the other. Freya then got tired of waiting and decided to reveal herself. That's when the two of them stopped fighting to look at her. When she told them what she did, the two of them thanked her, because in their eyes, she freed them from the curse of the crown. And so they both joined her Familia, slowly working their ways up to level 6s. The two are consistently treated as partners, but they absolutely hate each other. But it's kind of their own fault because they are rivals and they consistently keep up their rivalry. Hogni is, of course, extremely skittish, scared, and a chinio. As a result of this, he actually goes out of his way to stay hidden at all times. At least he tries to. Unlike most elves, he doesn't fight with magic, he fights with just a sword, with a cursed blade, specifically. Now, there are two ways that Hogni fights. There's the original Hogni, and then there's Dark Hogni. That's the only way I can describe it. So, the original Hogni, once again, very scared, constantly using his cursed sword as a weapon. We'll get to that in a second. But, and then there's Dark Hogni. Dark Hogni comes out whenever he activates his only magic, that being Danmachi. Danmachi turns his personality into a completely new one. And I don't mean this is hypnotism or autosuggestion or anything like that. No. No, it literally replaces his personality with a different personality. This personality is vastly more braver and more brutal than the original, and so he just goes on full slaughter whenever he goes into this form. The best way to describe him is basically the Terminator, and helping him in his slaughter, of course, is his cursed sword. Now, his cursed sword, Victim Abyss, yes, he's a Chinimyo, so he'd have a very cringe name like that. Victim Abyss is a completely black sword that when he swings it, it actually expands and bends. It's like a whip. With Victim Abyss, he's able to get around shields and armor, and best of all, he can outreach even pole arms in length. And the second ability of this cursed sword is that healing magic doesn't work on any wounds that it inflicts, so you basically just bleed and bleed and bleed if it cuts you. As for Heighar, he is a magic swordsman, primarily fighting with his magic, and if you get too close, he'll cut you down with his sword. Easy peasy. Now, his primary magic is Celestial Helder. This spell is lightning magic, where he produces a bolt, roughly the size of a human head, that he can fire 500 meters at pinpoint accuracy. What do I mean by this? I mean he can take out an entire horde of monsters with this spell by hitting their magic stones every single time accurately. That'd be equivalent of shooting every human being in the eyeball at 500 meters. And he can do this rapid fire and just do an endless barrage of lightning. He also has the largest magic capacity in all of Orario, which allows him to have an endless barrage where he wipes out an entire army. Next up is Van and Hilder, another lightning ability. This one is just a straight bolt. Instead of attacking your enemy with hundreds or even thousands of lightning blasts, this is just one concentrated bolt of lightning that's powerful enough to destroy an island. And yes, he has done that before. And then finally, there's Laundress Hilder. Laundress Hilder gives all of his magic power to a specific target, which then envelops them in lightning armor. Now, there's a rule to this spell, in that he must actually trust the individual that he's using this lightning on, and he has never, in his entire life, trusted anyone. As a result, this spell has never been used until it was used on Bell during the fight with Ottar, meaning Bell is the first and only person Heighar has ever trusted in his entire life. The lightning armor doesn't increase your defense. Instead, it gives you insane levels of speed. It also encodes all of your physical attacks with lightning. So whenever you strike down with a sword, or in Bell's case, his knife, even if they block the attack, the electricity from the armor is then shot through the person's body. Basically, it's as if you're fighting lightning itself, fast and electric. Next is the Gulliver brothers. Gregor, Alfred, Deviling, and Bertling. These four are pretty dumb. When they were younger, they didn't really know the ways of the world, and quickly they were scammed by a dwarf, who found out just how skilled they were as craftsmen. And so they ended up working for this dwarf, creating all kinds of jewelry for him, but getting shit pay. Freya discovered them, and they immediately fell in love with her at first sight. They then swore they would make her the most beautiful necklace they could, and Freya decided that she was going to purchase them. What did it cost her? Sex with the dwarf. 1 night for each prum. So basically, she slept with this guy 4 times, so he would then sell her his slave prums. Once again, they didn't know they were slaves. That's how dumb they were. Freya didn't care. She thought the 4 of them was worth such a simple price. The prums, on the other hand, they did not. And so when they heard about it from the dwarf who was gloating about it, they slaughtered him. And I don't mean they killed him. I mean they slaughtered him. They literally struck him with a head and the hammer so he couldn't fight back. Then they dragged him into the workshop, took whatever tools they had, and chopped him into little pieces. It is, without a doubt, the most brutal fucking murder in the entire series that I can think of, excluding the first day of blood. But that was a whole nother beast altogether. After brutally slaughtering this man, the 4 prums then determined that their greatest sin was allowing the goddess to sleep with such a pig of a man. They see it as an unforgivable sin, something they can never wash away, something that they will have to live with for the rest of their existence. And so they are completely and utterly dedicated to the goddess. Nothing else matters. Even their pride has no value in this world, because nothing can compare to that shame. The 4 brothers also act almost as one entity. They're able to think automatically once they see each other as if they were all one person. They're able to talk, have a conversation with one person as if they were one person. They're able to do everything as a single entity. Most people who see this firsthand are actually quite disturbed by it because it seems unnatural. As such, even though all of them are level 5s, because they are able to work perfectly together, they have the power of a level 6. And they 100% do not fear a single level 6 because they know they can go toe-to-toe with one. The only one that they have an issue with is Garth, and that's because his fists are like boulders, and so their entire strategy of working together means nothing because he has the power and durability to punch through their weapons and armor and tank anything that they throw at him. Next up is Horn. Horn is a level 2, and she's the personal assistant of Freya. Horn's real name is Seir, and she started off as a homeless girl who was filthy, hungry, just a miserable life. And one day she spotted Freya, and she saw the woman that she wanted to be, the goddess she wanted to be, because Freya was clean, happy, beautiful, everything that Seir wasn't. And so she then asked Freya if she could be her. Freya agreed because Seir has a special magic that the two could use in tandem with each other. Seir, or now Horn, could transform into the goddess, and I don't mean as an illusion. I mean she literally would transform into the goddess. She even had a weak level of charm that could be used on any individual, excluding gods. And Freya could transform into Seir now, and I don't just mean look like her, I mean physically turn into her, to a mortal human. And this worked out great for both of them because now Horn be this beautiful goddess and Seir could be a normal girl. And why does Freya want to be a normal girl? Because once again, she was feeling horrific because she was getting everything she wanted, but none of it was giving her happiness. And so she decided she might as well try out struggling for a bit. Maybe having a hard life might be something she would enjoy. And so she pretended to be Seir, got a job at the Mistress of Fertility, and basically just played the role of the sweet town girl, while Horn got to play the role of the goddess. It was great for both of them, but there was one little issue. You see, because they became one another, this also meant they shared the same thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And so Horn realized that the goddess was miserable, and she was breaking inside, because Horn could feel that misery and pain inside herself. And when Freya saw Bel for the first time and immediately fell in love with him, Horn could feel it. Freya fell in love with other people all the time. It was something that she did. She was the goddess of love. But the love she felt for Bel was so intense. Horn realized this was something different. This was something dangerous. This is a love that could destroy the goddess. And Horn generally hated herself for not realizing it before it was too late. And so, because of this, Horn also fell in love with Bel, because she was seeping off of Freya's love for him. But at the same time, she understood that this love was destroying the goddess, and so she hates Bel. And so these conflicting feelings inside of Horn leads to her being a complete yandere. Her two personalities are basically, I want to stab Bel, 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 I want to kiss 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 Bel. That is basically Horn's personality when it comes to Bel. When it comes to everyone else, he's a reasonable, rational human being. When it comes to Bel, she wants to fuck him and kill him at the same time. And because of this very broken part of her personality, Horn's decision was to betray the goddess and try to steal Bel away. This failed. Then it was try to betray the goddess by killing Bel. This failed. And then finally, she decided to betray the goddess by fulfilling what the goddess truly wanted inside. Freya wanted to be saved from herself. She wanted to be stopped. She wanted Bel to reject her. She wanted to be freed from this love. And while Horn was the first one to realize this, every other member of her familia began to realize it little by little as Freya began to break down and be destroyed. And so, the Familia picked sides during the war game. Horn obviously was on the side of Seir, saving the girl. Heighar and Hogni decided to side with the girl as well. The Gulliver brothers sided with the goddess to persuade their guilt. Allen sided with the goddess to save his sister, and Ottar sided with the goddess because of his loyalty, but wished he sided with the girl because he loved her. The rest of the Familia, on the other hand, all sided with the goddess because they didn't know the truth. They didn't know what was happening to the woman they cared about, the woman, the goddess they idolized. All they knew is that she wanted Bel and that it was good enough for them. And so the greatest war game in history was started. It would go down in history as the Faction War because it was a collection of almost every Familia in Orario versus the Freya Familia. During the war game, we ended up getting two standouts of the Freya Familia, besides the executives, that being Van and Heath. Starting with Van, he is a half-romp. Van becomes friends with Bel when Bel is kidnapped by the Freya Familia and is forced to go through the baptism with them. And at first, Van hated him, actively went out of his way to attack him to try to inflict as much damage as possible, but when Bel proved just how strong he was and how capable he was, Van began to respect him and actually began to teach him on how to survive against the upper ranks of their familia during the baptism. Because at a certain point, the executives started to train Bel. on how to fight. And so everyone else just had to watch as Bell got the shit beat out of him by the executives. And seeing Bell go through that hell, Van actually pitied him, and Bell earned his respect. And so the two of them basically trained together. Because they were now semi-friends, during the war game, Van actively picked a one-on-one fight with Bell, wanting Bell to use his Argonaut against him, wanting to prove that he was worthy. But at this point, Bell was a level 5, and he just knocked Van away like he was nothing. As for Heather, she's a healer. She wasn't always a healer. She was actually trying to work her way up to becoming an executive in the Freya Familia, but quickly realized she wasn't good enough, and she was never going to be able to have one of those top spots standing next to the goddess. And so she decided to become a healer. And she excelled at this. She became the second best healer in all of Orario. This is why she ended up getting the second name Golden Witch, because the best healer was the Silver Saint. Silver Saint, Golden Witch. They were seen as two sides of the same coin in Orario. While the Silver Saint was better at removing curses and all kinds of things, what made the Golden Witch amazing is the fact that she was a combat healer. She didn't just heal entire armies all by herself. She also had an automatic magic that healed herself. So no matter how much damage she took, she just kept healing and regenerating and regenerating. You could burn her, blast her, stab her, bludgeon her, crush her. It didn't matter. She would heal instantly from whatever damage you gave her, and she'd keep going. She was blasted directly with Crozo magic swords and just stood back up and regenerated. That is how powerful her healing magic is. When it comes down to it, if there's anyone who keeps the Freya Familia army going, it's her. If you cannot defeat her, if you cannot crush her, you cannot defeat Freya Familia. Because no matter how much you rip them apart, no matter how much you blow them up, no matter how much you knock down one of their soldiers, she will put them back on their feet in moments. It is an endless swarm of death, all because of her. Which is why, when Hadine switched sides in the war game, his first target was her. She bragged that she could regenerate from anything, but Hadine's response was, "Your healing is based on your magic power. Do you really think you have more than me?" And he just laid down lightning blast after lightning blast after lightning blast on her until she ran out of magic, couldn't regenerate anymore, and just burned her alive with his lightning. But yes, when the war game was finally over, the Freya Familia lost and the Alliance won. As a result of this, the Freya Familia was completely disbanded, all of their wealth was taken from them, and Freya was banished from Orario. Now, there decided to be a little loophole, because Seir wasn't banished from Orario, Seir was allowed to stay, and so Freya decided to live the rest of her life not as Freya as a wandering goddess throughout the world, but as a tavern girl in Orario. The vast majority of mortals had no idea that Seir was Freya, so this wasn't an issue for anyone. All the gods knew though, so they would all go to the pub just to run her ragged, just to screw with her. It was kind of their way of getting a little bit of revenge for Freya basically luring over them. But at the same time, Freya, well, Seir was happy, because while Bell broke her heart, he freed her. He freed her from the burden of love, the burden of the obsession she had for him. And yes, she still isn't madly in love with him, but she's now going about it in a much more simple way, you could say. She actively tries to flirt with him as Seir and just basically get closer to him the best she can. As for the rest of her familia, well, they refuse to join any other familia. And while they are no longer part of her familia, they are still extremely loyal to her. And basically every single one of them got a job at the Hostess of Fertility, where they are constantly working there day and night. And if they're not doing that, they're currently on guard duty, protecting the Hestia Familia, because there are two members who are constantly being targeted by outside forces, that being Haruhime, because the world now knows she has level boost, and at this point over 100 attempts of kidnapping have been forwarded by the Freya Familia, and two, Ryu, because she's Gale Wind, and she still has a lot of enemies out there. And once again, most likely it's probably in the double, if not triple digits, how many times an attempt on Ryu's life has been crushed by the Freya Familia. And this is all done in the shadows. The Hestia Familia knows they're being protected, they just don't know every little incident that happens. As such, while technically all employed by the Hostess of Fertility, the Freya Familia is considered an underling of the Hestia Familia in Orario. And that is the story of the Freya Familia so far. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, give a thumbs up so you enjoy more Danmachi and other many things. Thank you and have a great day.